Having a team gives you people to bounce your ideas off of. If you're an idea person like I am, having people that you can go to and say, hey, I was thinking about this. What do you think is pretty darn important. When you have a group of people who are as invested in your business as you are, it's something that takes things to a completely different level. Welcome to the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast, where being a badass has less to do with what you wear and what music you listen to, and everything to do with whether you've got the thriving online business of your dreams. I'm your renegade thinking Harvard Law grad turned online entrepreneur host, Bobby Klink. In my years building my thriving business, the most important lesson I've learned is that being a badass online marketer isn't about secret strategies or ninja tactics. It's about doing the basic stuff right and showing the F up. So each week here on the show, you'll get clear, easy to execute guidance on how to build your online business and a swift kick in the ass or two to make sure you're getting it done. Hey there, welcome to episode 147 of the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Klink. And I'm excited for today's episode because today's episode is one that I tend to do at the end of quarters and things like that, which is kind of sharing things I've learned, things I've figured out. In this episode, I'm going to share with you kind of the 4 biggest lessons I learned during the first quarter. And it's been a tumultuous first quarter, to say the least. I'm recording this, a couple of weeks or, I guess a week and a half before it'll go live, something like that. So, coronavirus is here and it's a thing. And so, it has been an interesting quarter. And I want to share with you the things I've learned because I think these are important lessons that you can apply to your business and your life. So, without further ado, here are the 4 biggest lessons I learned this quarter. The first lesson I learned is the value and importance of taking time off. This is something that candidly I've struggled with. I have a tough time unplugging. And I've said for a long time that part of it is that I love what I do. And that's absolutely, positively true. I love what I do. When I get up and work, I feel like I'm, spending the day with friends, or if I'm working on a webinar and webinar slides or emails, it's generally fun for me. So it doesn't feel taxing to me. That's honestly what I've always said. And that's kind of, a reality that I've been telling myself. It's a story that I've been telling myself that I don't need the time off because I'm having fun. Well, a couple of things have come up for me this quarter, including number 1, that I recognized that even if that were true, so even if that story were true, the problem is that me leaning in and not taking time off, not recharging, being the hard charging guy that I am, leaves a wake of destruction for other people. And what do I mean about that? Well, first of all, I mean that my wife and daughter, they would kind of like to see me. They would like to have some time with me. They would like me to spend weekends off. They would like me to go on vacations. They would like all of those things. And if I'm so busy hustling and doing all the things in the business, and whether it's because I love it and it's not stressful on me or not, the fact is that I'm putting stress on the other people in my life. And putting that stress on other people in my life has an impact. It has an impact on, on my life as well as their life. I can't be the fullest kind of extension of me that's possible if I don't have those around me in a good space. So that's part of it. But candidly, even though I enjoy what I do, one of the things I learned this quarter, because I actually did take time off. For those of you who are new here, I took a 5-day vacation in the Bahamas I guess it was in February. So kind of before all of the news broke and everything went crazy. And I didn't take my computer and my phone never went off airplane mode. So, I would check in with my team in our program management app, basically when I was on Wi-Fi in my room, but that was it. And I learned some things during that vacation, that time off. And these are things aside from kind of working on the relationship with my wife and with my daughter and, playing in the pool with my daughter till no end, going to the beach and jumping around in the ocean and having fun with my daughter. All of that was fantastic. But you know what? Taking time off also allowed my brain to reboot. Or, I don't know exactly how you want to describe it, but the reality is that because my brain was constantly going, and I wasn't giving it any downtime from work, I think I wasn't able to do the best deep work possible. And, I'm not saying that, I was doing bad work before, but when I was down there on vacation, and again, I took my notebook with me, just a kind of, an old style, paper and pen notebook, not intending to work, but just saying, hey, if I have an idea, I can jot it down. If something comes to me, I want to have something to write it down because my ADD squirrel brain, if I have an idea and don't write it somewhere, it's out the window. Well, on that vacation, I wrote a couple of pages of notes of what would later become now kind of this core thing that I can offer people, my email marketing map assessment. I mapped that whole thing out. And again, I didn't map out all the questions and all that, but I had this inspiration that I could help people with email. I could help people figure out what emails they needed to be writing in a very systematic way. And I didn't need, to ask them 150 questions. I don't remember. I said, I could probably do this in like 10 questions or less. And so this was the inspiration. And literally, I have this kind of email, or I have these pages that I'm looking at. Number one, I kind of drew like a diagram that went through the different emails and things like that with, kind of two different, if you will, two different options in different places, et cetera. So I went through that. And then I came up with names and I came up with, the types or the map types, and all of that came like a bolt of lightning. And you may be saying, well, Bobby, it doesn't sound like you took some time off, but I did. And that's the important thing. I wasn't actively thinking about this stuff. I was sitting at the pool watching my daughter and drinking a rum drink when it hit me. And I think a lot of us miss out on that because we don't give ourselves time. Now, maybe you do what a lot of people do and you schedule in like 3-hour blocks for deep work. Well, that's great. And I do that too. But the reality is that scheduling in deep work time isn't the same as giving your mind time to just work. Our subconscious, the back of our mind, whatever it is, I'm not a scientist. I don't understand it. But what I can tell you is that it's kind of like when you have something that you're trying to remember and it's on the tip of your tongue, but you can't, and you have to stop thinking about it for a while. And then all of a sudden, boom, it hits you like that. Well, the same thing I think happens to us if we finally take some time off. And so one of the things that I'm working towards is taking time off. And what I'll tell you is a lot of people hear me say that and then are like, wait, but you worked last weekend, certain weekends. And I'm like, well, yeah. I'm not saying that I'm never going to work weekends. When you're in the middle of a launch, for example, you're going to work weekends. You're not going to take time off. But we need to balance that with time that we do take off. So, big lesson number one is the value of taking time off and really unplugging and really getting away to let your mind have some time to just process what's going on in your business and your life. All of those things. If you'll do that, I think you will have inspiration that you would otherwise lack. The second big lesson that I've learned is the value of an exceptional team. And this is something I've talked about many times, that I've struggled with this for a long time, that I was essentially a solopreneur for a long time, that I didn't, have a team, that I was trying to do it all, or, I hired one person and then let her go. And so there's been this kind of up and down in my team building life. And we are now a cohesive team. I have Katie. She is my number 2, my integrator, and she's a full-time employee. And then I have my VA, Bobby Joe, who's my virtual assistant, on a contractor. And then I've got Deb, who is my social media manager. And what I'll tell you is the 4 of us together are more than the sum of our parts. We're able to get more things done, accomplish more, but also we are able to pick up the slack for each other. And as I'm recording this, for example, I've got a couple of webinars coming up this week. In fact, tomorrow, as I'm recording this. And what I can tell you is I never could have done this without the team, because my team pitched in and did things to free me up to work on the deep work, to work on the things that are uniquely me, like writing, my emails, creating the slide deck, envisioning what it is that this webinar, how I'm going to teach people, what I'm going to train them, and all of those things. I couldn't have accomplished any of that without a team. But even before that, I created a new quiz, the quiz that came to me while I was down in the Bahamas. And it was, for a time, it was like, hey, we're going to create this. But it was, I don't want to say it was a back burner. It wasn't the front burner, in a sense. And we were going to create it as collateral material for something. And then on a Friday at like 3:00, we decided, no, I think we need to get this out. There were some technology issues with an existing quiz I had. And so we had literally shut down all of our Facebook ads at the moment. We're like, well, are we going to try to rebuild the old quiz, or are we just going to, go all in on this one? So we decided, like I said, at about 3:00 on a Friday, that we were going to go all in on that quiz. We built it and launched it the next Monday. So over a single weekend, and again, you might say, wait a minute, you worked a weekend, you said I'm not supposed to do that. Well, again, but it was this sprint. And we created this, and it is an assessment now, the email marketing map assessment, that people who go through it are raving about it, saying this is amazing. Finally, I have clarity on what emails I should be sending. So the results are clearly good. And what I mean by this team is we created, because there are 16 different results, we created 16 reports that people could get based upon their particular result. We created the quiz. We created 16 results pages. We created a video for those pages. We created the quiz itself. We created a landing page and a bunch of other stuff. Again, only possible because I had a team. And realistically, it's one of those things where, because I need one thing done to work on another thing, et cetera, it's not just a matter in some ways of, we all pitched in. And so, however many hours it was going to take was condensed. No, because we could work on things simultaneously, and one person could be working on the graphics for the reports, et cetera, that could get done. So I could then create the landing page for the quiz. And so you can kind of see how it all came together. And I tell you this because I know a lot of entrepreneurs resist hiring a team. And so I'm just going to suggest to you that having that team is a fantastic idea. But it's also, having a team gives you people to bounce your ideas off of. If you're an idea person like I am, having people that you can go to and say, hey, I was thinking about this, what do you think, is pretty darn important. And yes, we can all have those things, if you will, in other ways in our business. We could have them like in Facebook groups or mastermind groups or things like that. But what I'm going to tell you is, when you have a group of people who are as invested in your business as you are, it's something very different. It's something that takes things to a completely different level. And it does it because, candidly, they know what's going on. They know the core values. They know the brand values. They know everything else happening in your business. And they know it in a way that other outsiders won't. So me having Katie, for example, to bounce marketing ideas off of, we're able to go back and forth, and I guarantee you that the results are better than the result I could have come up with on my own, that she could have come up with on her own, or that either one of us could have come up with by going to like outside groups, whether it's, a small Facebook group, a group coaching program, or even a mastermind, and gotten feedback. So I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to encourage you that if you have the wherewithal, if you can bring a team on, that can be a game changer for your business. Now, I've done other episodes. I did an episode about how a VA could change your life, and I stand by that. Having a VA, having Bobby Joe, who handles things so I don't have to. So I don't have to deal with customer support issues that are simple and easy to deal with. That, she manages my email and gets all the just junk out of there, so I don't even have to see any of that stuff. That is in and of itself hugely valuable. And having Deb, so I know that someone is posting my social media and my social media posts are taken care of, and also to quickly bring things to my attention if someone tags me or something like that, that hopefully, we have two sets of eyes looking for it. Again, gives me peace of mind and makes me know that I'm able to accomplish way more than I otherwise would have been able to. So, lesson number 2, having a team is a game changer. If you have the wherewithal, find a way to start building your team. That then brings me to the third lesson, and this is the lesson that I learned and that I think a lot of us are still learning, and candidly, it's raw and it's really still being learned. And that is to be ready for the unexpected. And this is where the coronavirus and the shutdowns that are happening and all of this is coming in to focus more than ever before. Now, we are all, as entrepreneurs, going to face unexpected turns. We're all going to face things that we didn't expect. It could be that technology goes down the day you're doing a launch. It could be, that Facebook, your Facebook ads account gets shut down, right in the middle of something important. It could be, who knows? Or it could be something like coronavirus, or it could be, not even something as bad as coronavirus. But let's say that you had something planned and literally right before that happens, there is kind of something that is drawing everyone's attention, or that maybe makes what you are going to launch not as important. And so we all have to be thinking about the unexpected. We have to be ready for the unexpected. Because if we're not ready for the unexpected, we are not going to be in a position to thrive. And there's a few different things that I think people need to be thinking about when they're thinking about the unexpected. The first is, a hard fact that I think a lot of people are going to learn, and it's partly about business, but it also applies to your personal life. We all need retained cash. We all need to have money in the bank to weather disruptions. And this is something that isn't only applying to entrepreneurs. It's not just applying to online entrepreneurs. It is going to be an issue that our economy is going to face in ways that we can't even conceive of now. Because so many people and so many businesses were on razor thin margins. With people, it's their paycheck to paycheck. With businesses, it's that, they are month to month. You get the point. Those folks are struggling right now. And if you're one of those, I'm sorry. And I want to encourage you to find ways to get scrappy. But the important lesson here, and hopefully this is a wake-up call. I don't know about you, but my grandmother, who's now passed away, but on my father's mother, she was always very careful with money, and that's a nice way of putting it. She was very stingy. And that came because she grew up, she was born in the 19-teens. So her formative years, like as a teenager, and I think into maybe early 20s, I haven't done the math, were the Depression. So she understood that we needed to be careful with our money. Well, I think, and I hope that this disruption will be that wake-up call for the rest of us. And I want to be clear. I am not casting aspersions here. I am not saying that I'm wonderful with money and I've got all this money in the bank and I'm like, no problem. No, I mean, I have some reserves, but I'm going to tell you that this really is bringing into focus for me the importance of increasing those reserves in my business, in my personal space, et cetera, just so that we have more cushion. And I hope it'll do the same for you. And again, we can start small by maybe it's putting aside, 15% and whatever it is, but we need to be putting money aside consistently in our business and in our personal bank accounts. And yes, we're entrepreneurs, so maybe you're like, oh, what's the difference? Well, keep it separate. Because part of it is like once you start building a team, for example, if you have a disruption, what you would like is that it doesn't affect your personal bank account. You're not having to put your personal money back into your business to pay your team, for example. Instead, you have retained cash in your business accounts to weather the storm. So that's one piece of advice. And I'm going to bring, I've got some friends who are kind of, financial advisors and helping entrepreneurs with this. And I'm going to bring some on to the podcast, at least one or two of them onto the podcast in coming months, because I think this is something we need to be talking about more. It's something that we need to be aware of. It's something that we need to have as a conversation more generally. Now, part of that is right now we're in crisis mode. And so we're in a very different place. And it's important in crisis mode to be thinking about it. But I want to have a broader conversation about this with you about the ongoing practice. Once things are back to whatever our new normal is, what should we be doing? So we're going to have some conversations about that in the future. And so that's one way that you need to be ready for the unexpected. But the other ways that you need to be ready for the unexpected are candidly that you have to be nimble. And this is where we as entrepreneurs and small businesses have a huge advantage. Because if you think about it, there were a lot of people who were facing crazy situations and difficult decisions, or they thought difficult decisions when the coronavirus issue came up. I'm one of them. I had a webinar scheduled for literally a week, the week where the shutdowns really started. And a lot of people were asking, well, should we just stop everything? Should we not? Again, last Friday's episode, I talked about why we can't do that. But at the same time, we can't just ignore it and pretend it's not happening. So we have to bring our ingenuity, bring our creativity to potentially pivot. I mean, maybe it means you have to pivot your offer. It could be that you need to offer something different. And some of the people in my community, it's amazing seeing what they're doing. There's a woman in my Fans First Society membership named Gina who helps people with, I think her brand is called The Cultivated Curl, but she helps basically people with curly hair. And before, I think she was helping people who cut hair and did things like that. Well, right now, if you think about it, that is not going to be a lucrative business because there are not going to be a lot of stylists who are trying to pay money right now to learn things because they're not cutting hair. So Gina has pivoted and literally created this thing, and she's going to create a workshop to help individuals kind of do things and work with their hair. That's the kind of ingenuity and nimbleness that we all need to have in our business. And I was so excited to see she in the group, in our kind of membership Facebook group, she posted this video that was kind of like a promo video and saying, what do you think about this? And I was just over the moon excited to see it because that's the kind of thinking and approach to business that we need to have. So some of it's going to be pivoting our actual offer. You might have to, and who knows? And by the way, I say this half jokingly right now, if I could find someone who had a course that would teach my wife, like my wife could like watch and figure out how to cut my hair, that would be great. Because I was like 2 to 3 weeks overdue for a haircut at the time that everything shut down. So by the time this thing's over, my hair is going to look pretty darn bad. Well, I got clippers, we got scissors. If we could figure out very quickly for a way for her to do it, great. I'd pay for that in a second. So again, I give that to you as an example of something that, maybe that wasn't a course that, you would have thought about creating before if you were a stylist, but now it might be. So I offer that in thinking about pivoting messaging. But the other thing is pivoting offers. But the other thing is in our messaging. And this is where we have to be leaders. And this is what I want to encourage you to think about. In this time, but I think going forward generally, we need more leadership in the world. I think we have a shortage of leaders. And I'm not making a political comment here. I think this is just a statement about society generally. A lot of people don't want to be the first. I say screw that. We need to want to be the first. We need to be willing to put a stake in the ground, to take a position and to stick with it. And that's important in our messaging, because when you have your values, your kind of North Star really dialed in and you know what it is, you'll be able to pivot your messaging to the unexpected. And again, it took me like a day or two to work through what I was going to do in my messaging. Because part of me was saying, well, is it like too soon? Is it wrong for me to, kind of make light and make jokes and be lighthearted like I normally am? And at some point I said, screw that. Of course I'm going to do that. Why wouldn't I do that? Now again, there may be some disruptions where I wouldn't, like, 9/11, I would not have been lighthearted about that. And maybe people are saying, well, what's the difference? Well, the difference is that this is a new normal. This is not a, situation that's going to come and pass. And so because this is a new normal, I have no choice in my view, but to keep being me and to bring my personal approach to things. And at the same time, though, it does mean tweaking some messaging. It does mean, for example, because like I am someone who I push the line. Well, if I'm going to push the line on this issue, I'm at least going to tell people in advance, because I don't want someone to be on there if, for example, and let's give a horrible example. Let's say someone who was coming to my webinar where I was going to, kind of make some lighthearted things about it. Let's say they had a family member who was in ICU. Now, I guess maybe they would be on there for distraction, but you could see how that might be a trigger for them. That might be something that that's not serving them to be there. So I'm going to tell them, hey, just so you know, this is coming. So if that's not for you, hey, maybe, let's chat offline, but let's not chat here. But I think we all need to be thinking about that, and we need to be able to pivot our messaging on a dime. There were a lot of people who it's taking them weeks to come up with new messaging and new thoughts, and you can't do that in a time like this. And again, I really think this crisis, it's bringing it to a fore, but it's something that I think we need to be thinking about more broadly. When we see trends, part of our particular advantage in the world, in the space we're in as online entrepreneurs with small, nimble teams, is that we can tack right away. We can say, ooh, I'm gonna make this tweak right now. And if we do that, we'll be successful. Again, the big companies can't do it. If you think about it, try to change the messaging of a big, huge company. It's not going to happen. I'll give you some small examples. I'm still seeing TV commercials right now for travel. And it's just a matter of those ad buys already happened and the companies aren't able to, they can't even triage all the things they've got going on. But if you think about it, someone advertising travel right now in the middle of this, it's wasting money. It is throwing money away. And so we don't have that because we have hopefully better sight about what we're doing, and we're more nimble so we can make changes. So again, lesson number 3 is to kind of be ready for the unexpected. And that means, having some cash on hand and being in a position to pivot your offers maybe and pivot your messaging and do it quickly and just kind of, put your stake in, the ground and move. That then brings me back to the last lesson. And the last lesson that I want to share that I've learned this quarter is that perseverance matters. And again, this is something, I could talk about it in light of the crisis, but we don't even have to go there. See, a lot of things happen. Like, for example, I launched a first quiz and it didn't really work. So some entrepreneurs would have said, screw it. Quizzes don't work for my business. And they would have just given up. But I didn't take that approach. I said, well, maybe I just have the wrong quiz. And that's where this new email marketing map assessment came in, and boom, it's working. But it's not just there. It's in everything I do. as I'm, doing more and more Facebook Lives, I'm getting more and more traction with them. As, we've started, the dab on my team has started repurposing those to IGTV, which again, I'm not telling you to repurpose everything, but she's doing it, and we're starting to see more reach and more, growth in my Instagram account. And it's not something that happens overnight. It's something that you have small gains. And if nothing else, maybe this is something where, the focus on, things that are happening in the world right now with the coronavirus will help you, because we've all seen those scary curves of people who are going to get sick. And those scary curves, if you look at them, and don't look at like where they start going down, but if you look at the first part of them when they really start to spike up, you'll notice that they look like something else. They look like what a lot of entrepreneurs, refer to as their hockey stick moment. If you look at successful entrepreneurs, what you'll see is a long period of what looks like very slow, steady growth, and then all of a sudden it shoots up. Well, in reality, just so you know, it was always pretty impressive growth. But when let's say you start with, you made $5,000 this year, and next year you add 33% to that. Well, that, or let's say 50%, because I don't want to do that math. That means you go from 5,000 to 7,500, right? That doesn't seem like a huge thing. But if you keep adding 50% each year you're adding more and more. And that's what, you start to see that entrepreneurship and business building is an exponential curve, because it's a compounding effect. Things that you do today will have impacts down the line, but it only happens if you keep showing up. And it means in the small things and the big things and everything else that you're doing in your business, you've got to keep showing up. And when you keep showing up, each additional thing you do is another cog that will go towards that exponential growth. Because I'll talk to you about a podcast. When you start a podcast, and let's talk about having the first 10 episodes. If somebody finds you on episode 10, they might listen to a few more, but they're at most going to download 10 episodes. Well, nowadays that I'm here at 140 something, approaching 150 episodes, when someone finds my podcast, if they love it, what people will tell me is that they will go back and binge listen to months and months of episodes. So it's not 10, it can be dozens upon dozens of episodes. So guess what that means? That means for every new subscriber I get, all of a sudden I'm adding more and more and more. And the longer I'm doing it, you start to see that kind of, it's not small incremental linear growth. It's kind of bending the curve. Well, the same thing happens, and my friend, Coach Glitter, Tiffany Lee Bymaster, would say the same thing happens with your Facebook Lives. When you start out doing Facebook Lives, you're going to be lucky to have one person show up live. I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to be honest with you. Your first Facebook Live, if you have more than 2 people on there live with you at a time, you're doing something really well. Over time, though, if you do them consistently, and if you're constantly providing a message that your people need to hear, and if you're doing things the right way over time, you start to build a following, and you build a bigger following, and a bigger following, and a bigger following, and all of a sudden you start to actually have a good number of people on live with you. And more than that, you're nurturing the living heck out of them, and you're building up audiences that you can then target with Facebook ads, and all of these collateral benefits. So it is this kind of constant persevering through these things is what really can make things successful. But I could also talk about it in the world of, if you go with kind of a launch model, what will happen is a lot of people, if you do it right and you start out and you launch small, but you take the money you made from that first launch and then you invest it in the next launch, your next launch will be bigger. And guess what? That means you will have more money that you could invest in the next launch, so it will be bigger. And you will then have more money that you can invest in the next launch, so it will be bigger. And you can kind of see how it snowballs. And so that is some of the power of perseverance. And I'm telling you this, and this is a message that I've talked about a good bit, but I had to put it in here. And this is not necessarily a lesson that I learned, anew this quarter. It's something that I know and that I preach, but it's so important. And again, I want you to hear it now more than ever. In these times, we need to persevere. And if you persevere, and if you keep going, and if you keep building, and if you keep focused on the things you're doing, it's going to serve you well. So that's the last lesson. Perseverance matters. So to recap quickly, the 4 big lessons that I've really learned or kind of had put into stark relief again this quarter are the importance of taking time off to let your brain kind of work in the background. That a team is invaluable, and the sooner you start building an amazing team like I've been blessed with, the sooner you're going to have, success that really is what you want. That we have to be ready for the unexpected because we're going to be hit with things, and the more we're ready with a war chest and an ability to pivot, the better. But finally, that perseverance matters, that we can't let something bad happening knock us down and convince us not to keep going. So those are the lessons I've learned. If you enjoyed this, I would love to hear from you. DM me on Instagram. I'm just at Bobby Klink. Or post this in your stories and tag me. But what I'd like to hear are, what are the lessons you've learned this quarter? What are the things that when you look back at the first quarter of 2020, you can say, here are my big takeaways? Because I'd like to hear them. I think you probably have value that you can lend me too, and you can provide that insight to everybody. So put those on Instagram. You can DM me or, post this episode in your stories and tag me and talk about the lessons you've learned. I want to hear it. That's it for this episode of the podcast. I'll see you again Friday. And that's it. I'll talk to you later. That's it for this episode of the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast. Make sure to tune in next time. And in the meantime, go out and build the badass business of your dreams.